Andy Pages fractured his left arm. The Dodgers officially released MRI results. This is not a story that anyone wanted to tell. Not the Dodgers. Not the medical staff. Not Dave Roberts. And certainly not Shohei Ohtani, who was seen walking alongside a teammate being rushed to the hospital on what should have been just another evening in the middle of a long season. But baseball does not ask permission before it breaks something. And on this night, what it broke was Andy Pages' left arm. The MRI results came out officially. The Dodgers released the statement in the way teams release statements when the news is bad, carefully worded, deliberately timed, and still somehow not enough to soften what it actually meant. A fracture. Left arm. Confirmed. For a moment, the baseball world went quiet. Not the loud, dramatic quiet of a strikeout with bases loaded. Not the held breath before a walk-off swing. This was a different kind of quiet. The kind that settles over a room when someone realizes the season just changed shape. Andy Pages was not just a name on a roster. He was a name that had been building towards something. A name that the Dodgers had been watching, protecting, and slowly handing more responsibility to. And now that name was attached to an arm that needed surgery. The images that circulated told the story before any official statement could. Severe bruising. The kind that does not need a medical degree to understand. The kind that makes people look away from their screens and then look back again because they cannot quite believe what they are seeing. Those images moved through social media with the speed that only bad news travels. By the time the Dodgers confirmed anything officially, most people had already seen enough to know that this was serious. This was not a bruise that healed in a week. This was not a situation where Roberts would stand at a podium and say they were being cautious. This was a fracture. This was surgery. This was a timeline that no one in the Dodgers organization wanted to start counting. The moment it happened, the response was immediate. Pages was rushed to the hospital. That phrase, rushed to the hospital, carries a weight that press releases try to dilute but never quite manage to. It means there was no waiting. It means the decision was made in seconds, not minutes. It means that somewhere in that stadium, someone looked at what they were looking at and said this cannot wait. And then came the image that made this story something more than just an injury report. Shohei Ohtani was there. Not in the abstract sense of a teammate who sent a message or posted something on social media an hour later. Ohtani was physically present. Walking alongside Pages. Accompanying him in the way that a person accompanies someone when they understand that the moment is too large to be faced alone. For a player of Ohtani's stature, that decision said everything. He did not have to be there. No one would have questioned his absence. He is the most watched player in baseball, possibly the most watched athlete on the planet at this particular moment in sports history. His time is accounted for in ways that most players never experience. Obligations stack on top of obligations. Expectations follow him from the dugout to the parking lot. And yet there he was. Next to Andy Pages. Walking into a hospital on a baseball night. The people who saw it did not forget it quickly. Some said it was exactly what you would expect from someone who understands what it means to be a teammate. Others said it was a reminder that behind the numbers and the records and the conversations about his place in history, there is still a person who notices when someone next to him is hurting. Both things were true. Dave Roberts faced the cameras the way managers face cameras when the news they are delivering is the kind that changes a team's plans for the next several months. His expression was not one of panic. Roberts has been in baseball long enough to know that panic does not help anyone. But there was something behind his eyes that was not quite calm either. It was the look of a man who had already done the math, did not like the answer, and was now prepared to explain it to everyone else. A reporter asked him directly about the MRI results. Roberts nodded before the question was even finished. He confirmed the fracture. He confirmed the surgery scheduled for next week. He confirmed that Andy Pages would not be available for a timeline that anyone in the room wanted to hear. Then came the question the room had been waiting for. Who replaces him? Roberts paused for just a moment. Not the pause of someone who did not know the answer. The pause of someone who understood the weight of saying a name out loud in this context. Because when you say a replacement's name in a press conference like this one, you are not just announcing a roster move. You are announcing that something real has been lost, and that someone else is now being asked to carry a portion of it. He said the name. And the room processed it in that particular way rooms process information when it is both expected and still somehow significant. Andy Pages had been one of those players that scouts describe with the kind of language that sounds almost cautious. Potential. Tools. Upside. Words that mean something real but are always slightly held back, as if fully committing to the praise might jinx the outcome. But this season, Pages had been moving past those words. He had been turning potential into production in a way that the Dodgers had hoped for but could never fully guarantee. He was becoming the player the projections had pointed toward. He was starting to feel inevitable. And then the arm. There is a particular cruelty in sports injuries that arrive at precisely the moment a player has begun to find their footing. It is not cruelty with intention. Baseball has no memory, no preference, no awareness of timing. But the timing still lands with a weight that feels almost deliberate. Pages had been finding something this season. Something that took time to locate and even more time to sustain. And now he would spend the next portion of the year in recovery, watching games from a position that no competitor ever truly makes peace with. Surgery next week. Recovery after that. A return date that no one was prepared to put a specific number on. In the hospital, away from the cameras and the press conferences and the social media images, Pages faced the kind of moment that sports rarely prepares anyone for adequately. The moment when the sport you have given everything to goes completely silent, and all that remains is a body that needs to heal and a mind that needs to find a way to wait. Ohtani understood that kind of silence better than most. He had faced his own medical chapter. He had sat with his own uncertainty about what the other side of surgery looked like. He had gone through the experience of being one of the most talked about players in baseball while simultaneously being unable to play the game at full capacity. When he walked into that hospital with Pages, he was not just offering presence. He was offering the specific understanding of someone who has been in a version of that room before. Someone who knows that the reassurances feel hollow at first, that the recovery timeline feels abstract until it suddenly feels very real, and that having someone next to you who has been through something similar changes the weight of the moment in ways that are difficult to explain but impossible to miss. Pages did not have to face the beginning of this alone. That matters more than the official statements. More than the MRI results. More than the roster move that will be announced in the coming days. In the middle of all the organizational language and medical terminology and roster management, there was a human moment. And it happened in a hospital hallway, and most people only heard about it secondhand, but it was real. Back in the press conference room, Roberts answered the follow-up questions with the measured steadiness that defines his public presence in difficult moments. He was asked about the bruising images that had circulated. His jaw tightened slightly. He said he was aware of them. He said the most important thing right now was Andy's health and his preparation for surgery. He did not editorialize. He did not perform outrage at the images having spread. He simply redirected toward the thing that actually mattered. He was asked whether the injury changed the Dodgers' approach to the rest of the month. Roberts looked at the reporter for a moment before answering. He said the Dodgers would adjust. He said that was what teams did. He said the players coming in to fill the gap were prepared and that the organization had confidence in them. But then he paused. And in that pause, before his next sentence, something passed across his face that was not quite managerial composure. It was something that looked more like the expression of a person who had just watched a young player's season take a turn that no preparation could have fully anticipated. He said Andy had been playing some of the best baseball of his career. He said it simply. Without decoration. And then he moved on to the next question. But that sentence stayed in the room a little longer than the others. The replacement was named. The roster was adjusted. The official processes moved forward with the efficiency that organizations maintain even when the human reality underneath them is heavy. But somewhere separate from all of that, Andy Pages was preparing for surgery. Preparing to go through the process that athletes go through when the body requires something that willpower alone cannot provide. The procedure. The recovery. The slow and non-linear return to something that resembles the normal rhythm of a baseball player's life. It would take time. More time than anyone preferred. The Dodgers would play on. That is what baseball does. The schedule does not bend for fractures or surgeries or difficult nights in hospitals. The games continue, the roster adjusts, and the season moves forward with or without the people who began it. But Andy Pages had begun it. He had been part of how this team took shape in the early months. His presence in the outfield, his at-bats, his growing confidence at the plate, all of it had been part of the Dodgers' identity through the first portion of the year. Now someone else would carry that portion for a while. And Pages would carry something harder. The waiting. The healing. The long work of returning to a game that does not stop moving while you are away from it. Ohtani left the hospital without making a statement. He did not need to. The act had already said everything that needed to be said. Not about Shohei Ohtani, the two-way player, not about the record contracts or the home run distances or the pitch velocities. About Shohei Ohtani, the teammate. The person who showed up when showing up was not required, not expected, and not anything other than the right thing to do. Some moments in a baseball season get remembered because of what happened on the field. This one will be remembered for what happened off it. Andy Pages fractured his left arm. The Dodgers released the MRI results. Surgery is scheduled for next week. A replacement has been named. And in the middle of all of that, someone walked into a hospital and made sure a teammate did not have to face the beginning of something difficult completely alone.